Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I am so excited to introduce you to our guest. Before I do that, here's a quote just for this episode. I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the waters to create many ripples. Mother Teresa. Our guest
Ooh,
today is throwing anti-diet stones. I mean, I don't know if I like the way that sounds. Is a pundit, a subject matter expert, a friend of the Culture Matters podcast, not only a clinician and a dietitian and a fitness expert, but an author of an amazing book, Deprogram Your Diet Culture. Deprogram Diet Culture. Dr. Supatra Tovar is back. If I want to give a shout out to our last episode, uh, episode 250. If you're listening to this show and you haven't listened to that episode, go take a look at that and come back, swing back around here as we unpack uh, Dr. Tovar's new book, Deprogram Diet Culture. Been helping peoples of all walks of life for many years on undoing some of the myths and getting their life in order and enriching. I feel like I'm doing an infomercial. I love having you on the show. It's amazing. I'm excited.
uh,
Thanks for coming back.
thanks so much for having me, Jay. I'm excited to be back with you.
Diet culture. So first, when we hear, what are some of the pros, right? Or I guess, things that are good about dieting, if at all? Is there anything at all that yeah, that's my first curiosity.
Well, I would say if there's any kind of pro, it would be that, that you have somebody who wants to improve their health. That is, I think, a very good motivation, but I think it gets skewed in diet culture. And that's because people equate improving their health with dieting. And actually, what happens is the opposite. And this has been proven time after time again, yet the promotion of diet culture keeps this myth alive. If you diet, if you cut out an entire food group, if you go down to 1,200 calories, you will lose weight and everyone will love you, and that will stay permanent. And that is what fuels this multi billion-dollar industry as the perpetuation of this lie. And I think that there are a lot of well-intentioned people who do promote these things who may not know what actually is going on physiologically in the body. I think a lot of people think about it so simplistically, like our body is a math equation. And if we take in fewer calories and we expend more calories than we take in, we're going to lose weight. It does work that way in theory, but the way that dieting is promoted and the method of the promotion is what leads everyone into trouble, because the body does not like to be in restriction. So if you look at most diets, before you're dieting, you're consuming maybe 2,500, 3,000 or more calories per day. And your body's very used to that. It's not necessarily happy, but it's used to that. And it's grown accustomed to that.
Mm.
And evolutionarily, we want to stay at the same weight because back in like feast and famine times, we were, in famine a lot.
Yeah.
And so the body is designed to resist restriction and to hold on to all of these calories because it doesn't know when the feasting will happen again. And it's biologically driven. It is not a psychological thing. So what happens in the body is that the body starts to keep the score of how much fat and how much muscle and how much water you've lost. And it is primed to return the body to that as soon as the diet is done. In addition to that, the body then is saying, okay, we're in starvation mode. This is danger, danger, danger. So I am going to slow down all of my fat loss. The one thing that you want to get rid of, it's saying, I'm sorry. No, 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 no. You are starving me. I'm going to hold on to this as long as possible. And even if you do lose that fat, it's going to come back as soon
Wow.
as the diet is done. And that's because as soon as you introduce food back, when you're done with your diet, the body's like, okay, we're safe now. Yes, yes, yes. And it ramps up your hunger like nobody's business so that you'll eat as much as possible to gain all of that weight back.
If I was benefiting from selling diet products, I would really want to market it that way.
Yeah. Yes. And that's how they're marketed. Most diets say, give me 20 days and you'll lose 20 pounds and you'll be at your healthiest weight in no time. And that may actually happen with a super restricted diet, but your body isn't going to allow that in the long run. It's going to say, oh my God, you're trying to kill me. You're starving me. And I've got to remember where we were at the beginning. And that's, kind of the whole,
Wow.
philosophy behind the weight set point theory. And is shown to be for pretty much anyone, no matter the type of dieting that they do, even with these weight loss medications that are out there that are touted as, this miracle, weight loss cure. Once people go off of those medications, which if you look at them, they're not that much different than a very restrictive diet. It's decreasing your hunger, it's keeping food in your stomach as long as possible, but you're ingesting so fewer calories than you were before. And what we see is the moment people go off of that, of course, their hunger goes up as it should. And I want to talk about hunger too, because everyone thinks hunger is bad and it's not. But their hunger goes up and they go and they eat as much as they can. And it's almost an uncontrollable process. In addition, with the weight loss medications, they're not, especially if you're not addressing these major lifestyle issues, if you had, poorer ways of managing your nutrition before these weight loss medications, and you continue to eat in the same way that got you where you didn't want to be in the first place, but you're eating much less of it, you're going to go right back to the same eating pattern once you're done with the medication. And you will most likely gain the weight back.
Same eating pattern. Is it possible for you to gain even more weight because of the slingshot?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
It's as if
There's
you're conditioning your body to gain more.
Yes. Well, you're not even conditioning. It's actually like a physiological process. When your body goes into restriction, to get back where it was before, your body goes into what's called compensatory hyperphagia.
Wow.
And all that means is to make up for what was lost before by eating a lot. Compensatory and hyper means lot, and phagia means eat. So it seems for most people to be an uncontrollable process. And that, is one of the direct results that come from denying your hunger. And that's what I wanted to get a point across too, is that people are conditioned. And it's so weird to me. It's like so strange to deny our hunger and to think that hunger is bad. And hunger is not bad. Hunger is your body's way, a loving way of telling yourself, hi, I need nutrition. It's not an evil thing. It's actually designed to keep you alive. And when we deny it, our hunger hormone, mainly ghrelin, we also have other hormones, but ghrelin will ramp up and it'll be like, hi, oh my God, I'm so hungry. So all you're doing is thinking of food. And that's because the body's trying to protect you. But when we don't pay attention to it, that's when these other systems come into play, suppressing thermogenesis. And because the body's like, okay, this lady's not listening to me. That's bad. So I got to now just conserve and make sure that I don't die because for whatever reason, she's not hearing me call out. So when we listen to that and we actually allow ourselves to eat when we're hungry, we're signaling to the body, hi, I'm okay. I am not in danger. I listen to you. I love you, body. Yes, you're hungry. And when we eat slowly enough and mindfully enough, we give our body time to register this food in our stomach, and we can actually make it a pleasant experience if we're eating mindfully, which is what I teach in my book as well.
Well,
And then we listen to our body for when we're done eating. This is another area where people, if they're checked out, if they're in mindless mode or distracted mode or emotional mode, they don't listen to when the body's full. And they're usually eating so fast that they're not registering
oh, wow.
in the body how full they are. But if we go slow enough and we eat until we are satisfied, the body then is like, yay, I am safe. And that's what we need to tell the body in order to digest our food properly. We actually need to be in a parasympathetic nervous state to be able to digest our food, which means we need to be relaxed. We need to be present. We need to be listening to our body. And then our body's like, hooray. When we do this, and it sounds easy, and it's not necessarily easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. But when we learn how to do this and we practice this enough, the body then will go to its healthiest weight without even trying. It's not even necessarily so much about what we're eating. It's about how we're eating.
Wow.
But if you get really, 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 really good at this and you're listening to your body's like, oh, Lord, that's 10 too many potato chips, lady. I can't even feel my tongue anymore. Hey, you've had an entire plate full of French fries. My body does not like that. But if you're eating, say, in the more healthful range, with lots of colorful fruits and veggies, whole grains, beans, legumes, and you listen to how your body feels when you're eating this way, your body's like, yay, hurrah, hooray, you're giving me stuff to give me energy. So it's really about learning what the body physiologically needs and what it thrives on and listening to the body. And when you do this, bonus is that you never have to diet ever again, which is like so freeing and so wonderful.
What do people say
when they do this?
Yeah, after.
Yeah. One of my favorite things to ask my clients when they come in the door is, do you think you can eat whatever you want, whenever you want, and be at your healthiest weight? And they all say, heck no.
Yeah.
When I take them through this process, I ask them again, the moment I know that they're getting it, and I said, do you now think that you can eat whatever you want, whenever you want, and be at your healthiest weight? And they're like, oh my God, I never thought it would be possible to do this. And it's so incredibly freeing. There is one other key that I think is so important to the process. It's not just about listening to your hunger and your fullness. It's not just about mindful eating. It's about having no food be off limits. And that is a very scary thing for a lot of people because they think, what do you mean I can have whatever I want whenever I want? No, I can't. I've always been told I can't eat carbs. I got to cut out sugar, can't eat soda, can't drink soda, can't. They have a list of bad foods. But that list of bad foods ends up biting them back because when we have a psychological taboo list of these things that we're not supposed to have, it creates this craving for them until you have a binge on them. And when you binge on them, you're thinking, okay, I'm going to eat this all right now because I never know when I'm going to be able to eat this again. And it creates this restriction binge cycle that is extremely detrimental to our health. But with my clients, and this was hard for them, they were like, lady, I think you're crazy. When I said, have no food off limits, have no morality attached to food. There's no good, there's no bad, there's just food. What happens with them is that taboo thing disappears. They're like, okay, well, I'm going to go out and I'm going to allow myself pizza. I'm like, go, allow yourself pizza. And when they do, they're like, oh, I'm not eating 8 slices. I'm eating this one slice
Wow.
and I'm really loving this and I'm allowed to do this. And then they get, oh, okay, all right. I ate this pizza. I felt pretty good. It's always there for me. I can always have this. But what else does my body want? And that's when you start to see people become like truly mindful eaters. They listen to how the food sits in their body, how much energy it gives them. And then they're really tuning in. They're like, oh, wow, my mental health is better. Oh, I can think better. I'm not foggy headed. This is awesome. And when they start to feel that, they might not eat as much pizza, but they will certainly not have a frightening, like, oh my God, there's pizza at this party moment. I can't eat that. They'll allow themselves to eat that. And then they'll be like, yeah, that was good, but it was really salty.
You think that
It
could
didn't have,
trigger states of anxiety that even throw people off their enjoyment of
oh
a
yeah.
party?
Oh, absolutely. I think when people are dieting, one of the things that is most stress inducing is going out and being social and
Hmm.
eating with others. And everyone that has come into my door has had that fear because they're like, oh, it's going to take me off my diet. And when they realize that they don't have to diet, when they realize that they can eat this food, and then maybe they're going to make different choices when they're home alone. They're going to cook more or they're going to pay attention to the nutritional quality of their food, but they can go out and they can enjoy themselves. That is like, to me, like one of the most satisfying parts of what I do is to see how happy it makes them and how it doesn't throw off their health goals. And they realize that they can enjoy holidays and parties and going out to dinner with friends.
Hmm.
And they can enjoy it even more because they're paying attention to their body when they're eating those things and they're not stuffing themselves or denying themselves. And they're just, their mental health is so much
Hmm.
improved. And that is like, I mean, it's freeing.
What relationship, if any, does hunger have with choice?
Well, I think that when we get really good at listening to our body, our hunger actually sends us kind of signals.
Hmm.
Sometimes you're like, oh my God, I would love something with bread and pasta right now. You like get that, like, I really want this. And usually that's because your body's saying you're low on energy.
Wow.
You need glucose and I need it fast. And usually it's telling you, you know, within reason, it's saying, hey, I'm needing some energy, right? Or you might get a glimpse in your mind of like colorful fruits and vegetables. Oh my God, I want that salad so bad right now. And what your body's probably telling you is, I need some vitamins and minerals in me, and I need some fiber, really
Hmm.
low on that. Or it may be like, I just need something comforting, more fat right now. And you get an image in your mind. I think it's so important to give yourself that because
Wow.
I think it's your body telling you exactly what nutrients it needs right now.
So is this am I potentially understanding? I want to make sure I follow. If we're in a diet uh, culture, that could potentially confuse the body to not direct us where we actually need it.
Right. Oh, well, we have all of these rules in diet culture, and they've shifted and changed over time. It's really, I think, insidious to me because I think a lot of it is also fueled by agriculture and industry. So, like if you look at like 80s, it was all about fat is bad. And so you saw an entire food industry grow, all of the, I can't believe it's not butter. And like all of this, actually when like trans fat was introduced into the diet, and it was industry driven. And because if you look at the history of food and packaging food, we really didn't start to see any kind of problems with obesity or being overweight until like the 60s, 70s, 80s. And that completely paralleled the industrialization of food, like processed food and tinkering around with food. And so people started to gain weight with all of these products coming in and inundating our grocery shelves, and people started to gain weight. And this is when diet culture went bonko, because they're like, okay, well, we have got to find the culprit, which really is, I think, in many ways, the industrialization of this food, the food processing, and a proliferation of our portions. Our portions just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And our weight paralleled this. Also, our health paralleled this. You started to see a huge uptick in cardiovascular disease and diabetes, cancers, all these age-related diseases. Really, they're like food-related diseases, right? And so then you had diet culture coming in with a solution. And that solution was, of course, industry driven. So the industry's like, okay, let's make all this food without any fat. And they put a ton of sugar in and took some of the fat out. And of course, people kept gaining weight. So then, of course, well, sugar's bad. We got to cut all the sugar out. And so you got this proliferation of industry coming in with all these no sugar products. Well, weight kept going up. Now we've got, okay, let's cut all carbs. Carbs are bad, right? Wow. And we have all of these products, gluten-free products, and all of these things, and all these diets to match. And especially, I think the most dangerous and unhealthy is protein, protein, protein. You just need protein. You don't need any carbs. You need protein. You got to have a lot of protein. You got to look at that. That's industry driven because our big ag is, of course, subsidized by the government. And so they want to sell as much as possible, as fast as possible, to make as much money as possible. So we've got this proliferation now of zero carbs and tons of protein, and we still see obesity rates going up. Even worse now is that you have the medical industry who say, okay, well, obesity is a disease. Now, there's a good reason behind that and a really bad reason behind that. The good reason is to destigmatize obesity, and I'm for that completely, absolutely. But the bad reason, the thing that I think is harmful to people is to couch obesity as a disease because it makes them feel powerless. And when you're powerless, who are you going to rely on? You're going to rely on your doctor for medication. You're going to rely on big pharmaceutical companies to come in and save the day, rather than seeing the problem as the whole. And the whole is we didn't have obesity until we had processed food. And that is really important. And especially now, even with people who are like, no, processed food, but yes, protein, 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 especially animal protein. You're still seeing obesity because people don't understand that we need much less protein than's being touted. If you really look at it, I mean, the simplest way is to look at your palm and to cut off your fingers, not really, but to just look at the fat part of your palm and the width of your palm. And that's as much as the body can process in a day of animal protein. Oh, wow. It can process more plant protein because, there's a fewer, protein concentrated into plant proteins. You can eat a lot of plant protein, but you can only eat this much animal protein before, and it could be a little bit more, say if you're sick or if you're an Olympic athlete, but not if you're just the average person working out in the gym. You would need, about 0.8 to maximum like 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram. And when you get more than that, it's stored as what?
Is it fat?
Stored as fat.
Wow.
Yes. And people think protein is pure. I just pee it out. No, that's actually incorrect. When you get an excess amount of protein in your system, it becomes very difficult on your kidneys and on your liver to help process all of this. So what does it do? It's like, oh, I've got, anytime we have an excess of anything, whether it's carbohydrate, protein, or fat, it's going to be stored as fat. And so people have this health halo around protein that I think is very detrimental to them. So if you look at all of these
Mm.
factors right now influencing people, it's, the big agriculture and the food industry saying protein, 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 cut out all the carbs, which is terrible for the body, by the way, because we thrive on carbs. We should actually be getting the majority of our calories from carbohydrates in the form of starchy, grainy carbohydrates, vegetables, fruits, beans, legumes, which also contain protein, and then a smaller amount of protein and an even smaller amount of fat is what the body actually really needs. But right now, we're in this maelstrom of misinformation that's telling us that the majority of our plate needs to be protein, very little of it needs to be carbohydrate. And if you do this, all of a sudden, miraculously, you're going to be losing weight. Oh, but if you don't, just take this medication and you'll get there. But that medication is pretty insidious and very scary. And
Wow.
you would need to be on that for life to be able to maintain the results, which to me, I'm like, I don't want to be on any medication for life. And we don't need
Wow.
that. But we're told obesity is a disease and you need that. So we really need to look at where all the dollars are going to make the best decisions for our health. And that's why I wrote this book, because I really would love to create a revolution and dismantle diet culture, which I think that's a tall order. And I need everyone. So that's
Yeah.
why I'm
Wow.
putting this message out there. But imagine if we rejected this incorrect messaging and we actually learned how our body likes to operate, and we followed that instead of this industry that's just essentially lying to us and making lots and lots of money off of our poor health.
Mm. I'm a listener and I hear it loud and clear. It's
Mhm.
day one tomorrow. I hit the brakes with the diet.
Yeah.
Where am I starting?
Okay. So I think there's three very essential steps in deprogramming yourself from diet culture. And the first one, I think, is probably the most influential, although I think all three are influential. And that is to really take a look at your social media feed. Because if you were to take a long, hard look at it, not only do you see content that I think is pretty detrimental, because if we're following certain celebrities, especially the ones that are very, image
Yeah.
focused, what we're receiving in terms of messaging for ourselves is we're not good enough and we'll never look like that. And we're going to feel terrible about ourselves and it's going to make us want to go diet. Hide, block, unfollow any content that makes you feel bad about yourself. And that is really powerful when we do this. When we do this, we're sending a message to the algorithm that we don't like this anymore. And then when we reprogram our social media feed, and I encourage people, what do you actually love? What makes you feel good? Who inspires you? Who makes you feel good about yourself no matter what you look like? Follow those guys. And when you start to do this, the algorithm is going to bring you more. And if you think about it, if we have 1,000 people doing this, if we have hundreds of thousands of people doing this, how powerful are we? Right? My favorite is
Wow.
go look at you know, puppies, kittens. Look at people that are doing good in the world. You know, find content that makes you laugh and inspires you. And if you're going to be on social media, use it for your mental health in a good way. And that is very, very, I have pretty much all of my clients do that. And when they do that, when they look at social media, they no longer feel horrible about themselves. The second step, and this is correlated, is I encourage people to limit all advertising consumption and to stop subscribing to fashion magazines or super bodybuilder workout magazines, if you don't look at that stuff. And that's because if you look at all advertising, especially in these magazines, they're all designed to make you feel terrible about yourself, make you feel not good enough, and make you want to buy their product. And do we really need that? No. We were doing just fine without looking at that stuff, and we'll be just fine not watching that and not consuming that. And instead, we take the time that we might have been, mindlessly watching some advertisements or reading, a toxic magazine, and we can start a hobby, learn how to play an instrument, learn how to paint, anything else, read a book, anything else that's going to enrich you and make you feel good. Third step is hard, but not impossible. And I am not advocating cutting any relationships at all. But we all know some toxic influences in our lives, personal influences, people that encourage us to diet, people who are comparing weight with you, pointing out where you might be fat, telling you where you need to diet and how you should diet like that. That's very toxic, because the messaging that we're getting from those people is we're not good enough as we are. And we're not lovable as we are, or we're only lovable if we lose weight. And that is a trap. You are lovable just the way you are. You are unique and amazing just the way you are. You don't need to compare yourself to anyone else, because there's no one in the world like you. So I encourage people to create some boundaries. It's not to cut off these relationships, but to maybe say, that's an area I don't want to talk about right now. Switch the subject. Or I'm going to spend this amount of time with this person, and then I'm going to stop and I'm going to go and gravitate towards people who love me exactly as I am. And we all have people in our lives like that, who are like, you're perfect the way you are. You don't have to change. Love you just the way you are. And when we surround ourselves with these people, then we're removing all of these external influences. We're only keeping the positive influences in our lives. And that's when we can go about the very loving and amazing work of listening to ourselves and changing old toxic patterns of thought. And those are the steps that I lay out in detail in the book, and also in the corresponding online course that I have.
Step one, I have a question about this, the social.
Yes.
Is that when you were explaining the social interaction that if we're engaged, is there some level, something, if it's symbolic or similar to what happens to our body when we're in a diet, how am I trying to explain this? Let me think. When you were explaining the diet affecting the body and how it confuses the
Yes.
body.
Yes.
Do you think at some level the social algorithm, based on what we're following, is doing that to our psychology?
Yes.
Like, that was the
Absolutely.
connection that I drew. Like, is that,
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
If you
I'm
look
trying to
at
pull at a string here, but
if you look at the pandemic alone, that forced pretty much everybody online. And you saw a huge increase in mental health disorders. My practice was packed. I even created, and this is a labor of love. I don't make any money off of this. I just do this because I had so many people coming to me that I couldn't see because I was packed and full, that I created a Facebook group for therapists to help refer clients to people. And that showed you how detrimental being online like that was, especially for the kids and the teenagers. Horrible for them. And it really is still impacting their mental health today. And that's because I think for most people, when they look at social media, it's a mindless activity. And it just becomes this kind of echo chamber after a while. If you start, you're at home, you've been on Zoom as a kid, and you're comparing yourself because you're looking at yourself all day online, and you're seeing, oh my God, I look terrible, or this is horrible. Then you go on your phone, and all you're doing is you're watching celebrities and all of these, popular people. And then you're just thinking, oh, that's even worse. I can't even compare myself at all to these people. That it's even worse. But you're just kind of mindlessly looking at
I
this
wonder if there
content.
could be a inverse relationship with self-awareness and programmatic, like falling into the algorithm, right? If it's
Yeah.
tapping into our the lowest of, I'm not trying to, I don't have the words for it. If it's tapping into our, like, let's say our low resolution urges,
Yeah.
and you're saying, hey, first step, take a step back from that so you can start programming your own awareness.
Hmm.
I wonder if there's an inverse relationship between being programmed by the algorithm and our self-awareness. I'm trying, I don't know.
Oh, totally. I think there is probably, for most people, even if they're doing this mindlessly, there's a subconscious aspect happening. And this can go way back before you even are introduced to social media. I think a lot of our deepest, most negative thoughts about ourselves form early. And that can come from your relationship to your caregiver. It can come from, your school exposure to peers. It comes from consuming media of any kind, even maybe before you go into social media, but earlier and earlier, are going into social media, and they're forming, based on what they're seeing, a deeply ingrained belief about themselves that is totally false, that I'm worthless, or
Yeah.
I'm too fat, or I'm not good enough as I am. And that carries into when they get into social media. I think that's the running tape in the background, in their subconscious. And then it's reinforced every time that they're looking at this stuff. And so a big part of my work and part of what's in the book is bringing those automatic thoughts into the forefront and creating awareness about them. If you look at just the definition of mindfulness, it is an open-hearted, non-judgmental awareness of the present moment. So if we're being mindful, we're being open-hearted and non-judgmental about the thoughts that are coming into our minds and bringing them to the forefront and really learning how to be objective and really learning how to discern whether or not these thoughts are actually true. And when you really examine them, they're not. There's nobody on the planet who is worthless. Everyone has an inherent worth just because they are. And when you really realize that, and you realize you've carried these negative thoughts for so long, you then can gain some more awareness and say, well, okay, if this thought's not true, maybe I should change this thought to something that actually serves me. And when you do this, and you do this systematically, and I teach that in the book, you then learn how to practice the thought, and you learn how to actually shift your thought. And what you're doing is you're rewiring your brain to actually, have that become your automatic thought. And that is when absolute lifelong change can happen. The reason why Weldon Long did my forward for the book,
Weldon, love Weldon.
I know he's the best. And he is a mindset guy. If you look at how he completely shifted and changed his life from being in jail, convicted felon, you know, trouble with substances, to where he is now, he did that by looking at his mindset and deciding for himself what would suit him best to go where he wanted to go. And you can do this as well with deprogramming out of diet culture. That's why he wrote the forward. He and I are very, very much alike in that we have a lot of power in our thoughts, and we can choose to be mindless, or we can think that we're powerless and subject to this very insidious and toxic industry, or we can become aware and we can become discerning, and we can really challenge all of these messages that we're getting from diet culture, and we can say, I don't subscribe to this anymore, and I am going to start to tap into myself. I am going to start to listen to myself and trust what my body is telling me, and reformulate my mind to become my friend. And that's how you escape and never go back to diet culture. And when I've seen this with my clients, it's like
Wow.
the greatest feeling in the world to see them know that they're now free and they do not have to buy into all that stuff.
For our entrepreneurs listening, what impact does eating consciously can it have on their business productivity?
Oh my goodness. There, I mean, it has a direct, I think, a direct correlation because it's not just about what we're eating. It's about becoming aware and it's about listening to us, ourselves on a deeply intuitive level. So once you start to do that and you realize how your body responds, then if you apply this to business, I am going to listen to myself. I am going to be present with my clients. I am going to listen. I am going to adopt an abundance mindset over a scarcity mindset. You can imagine where that goes in business. That's what Weldon does. That's all that Weldon, promotes is let's be aware of ourselves. Let's trust and believe in ourselves. And let's change the way that we think in order to achieve these goals. Both are equally achievable once you start to become objective and truly listen to yourself.
Have you do you have any interest in the corporate? I can imagine the corporate world having a great interest in
Yes.
adopting some of this, in this philosophy and practices
Okay.
for
Look at
organizations.
how much healthcare costs for a corporation. And they're always kind of looking for ways to help their employees be healthier, right? So that they can lower that cost and then keep their workforce healthy. But it hasn't been working. It hasn't been working because the things that have been promoted are straight from diet culture. You need to, eat less and move more. And everybody knows that intuitively, but they're like, it doesn't work. But if you can imagine, if you have an entire workforce that is in tune with their bodies are healthy. And when their bodies are healthy, their minds are also healthy. They're able to think clearly. They have more energy. They feel better. Their mental health improves. How is their work going to improve? It's going to improve exponentially because you have a workforce that is less sick, that is calling out of work less, that is paying attention, that has, all of their cognitive abilities like primed and ready to go. It completely and totally helps the entire health of the organization and helps business grow.
Mm. Let's say, our listeners want to bring you in to do a workshop or a keynote for their organization. What is that
Just
something that
contact
you're
me.
available?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. All they have to do is just reach out to me. And I'm happy to bring Deprogram Diet Culture because it's an online course as well. That's ready to go. That's something that they could offer straight to their organization, or I can craft and create according to what their needs are, a program that would
Hmm.
be beneficial for their group. I just did a talk for RPOA. It's a role play at the Olson Agency on mindfulness and how that helps in sales. So there's so many ways that you can use the concepts. There's behavior change that I teach in the book and the course, and that can be directly applied to business. So there's so many ways, and always happy to do a keynote speech. I just think that's where inspiration lies, and if you can inspire a company to improve their health, they're also going to be improving their wealth.
What's the best way to reach out to you? A listener has interest in that.
Absolutely. I have two websites. My practice website, if anybody wants to come in for therapy from me or from my associates, is drsupatratovar.com. It's DRSUPATRA Tovar, TOVAR.com, all one word. I am licensed in California, Colorado, Illinois, and soon to be New York. My associates are all California based. If you want me for coaching, if you want to find out about the book, if you want to find out about the course, about speaking, I have an educational company called ANEW, which stands for Advanced Nutrition and Emotional Wellness. And the website is anew-insight.com, ANEW-insight.com. And you can find out anything about my speaking, my coaching, my book. I also have a podcast of my own, which is called the ANEW Body Insight Podcast. So
That's
you can also
amazing.
listen to my podcast. Mm-hmm.
I definitely challenge the audience to listen to that and to take a look at episode 250. Very different conversation. You know, in closing, what would you, if there's one thing you think our audience needs to do, right? Like an actionable step to move out of that, seems like reactionary and regressive diet. Like it doesn't make any sense, right? To do that, move away from that and move towards a better version of them. What would that one thing be?
I joke sometimes, but it's not totally a joke, that the mind can be a jerk, but the body loves you. And when you actually really start to listen to your body and you start to look at the thoughts that are coming into your mind, and all of this is essentially self-awareness, you're going to hear the answer inside of you. Everyone has their own best expert inside. And if you are inundated in this culture and you listen to your body's most likely going to tell you, this is bad for me. Reject it. You do not have to be a slave to this culture. And if you want actionable ways to find a way out of that, please read the book at the very least, come take the course, or just message me if you want to have a little encouragement on what can be your first steps. I am so happy when people reach out to me and ask me. But the final takeaway is you have everything inside of you. Your body tells you exactly what it needs. Start to listen to it.
Thank you all for listening to this episode. I'm telling you, follow Dr. Supatra Tovar. Get the book, Deprogram Diet Culture, and listen to episode 250. Please leave us a review on the Culture Matters podcast, and we will see you next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.